eat Thompson for an hour. I'd rather fuck a blood relative.
Yo, yo, yo. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Thompsin and Other Disappointments on Monday the 13th of February. It's 1:05. It's my goddamn lunch break, and I'm coming out to you guys. And yeah, it's let's start this. Let's start this shit, shall we? How are you all doing? What's going on? What's going on, people listening to this on Apple Podcasts and YouTube later on, and Spotify and all of the other places, weird and wonderful places that this podcast emerges. I'm back. I'm alive. This is episode 151 of your twice-weekly dose of politics and dystopia. Coming to you from the aftermath of the shittiest town in Hampshire, Aldershot, twinned with purgatory. If it's your first time checking out the show, welcome. What's up? Pull up a pew, crack open a beer. I don't care if it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, as indeed it is right now as I'm recording this. It's a Monday, all right? It's hard. Life is hard. Just, do what you need to do to get by, right? And if that means listening to me, evoking some depressive catharsis, or you pulling back the ring pull of a 6% craft ale before your girlfriend's even back from her brunch or lunch date or whatever, so be it. That's fine. It's a shit, sick, corrupt world we live in these days, and I am here to effectively host it for you now for the next hour at least. Like fucking, like I'm Willy Wonka dancing around, like pointing out the awfulness. Dancing and singing, like cruelty all around me, and somehow taking pleasure in it, hosting it, trying to make it entertaining for you. I quite like that image. Like me with a top hat and a cane, pointing at the new COVID variant and opioid overdoses and a declining birth rate over here, just, prancing along to the rhythm of the doom lols. That is the vibe here. That is this show. It is Gallows Humour Central. Like we're all fucked. Now sit and drink with me. So, where did we leave off last week, man? What were we talking about last? Oh, fuck, actually, first, let's talk about the first and possibly the last ever Riot Society event that took place in Soho, London on Friday just gone. It was pretty good. It was lots of fun. The actual event was. The run-up to it, the organisation thereof, utterly fucking abysmal. Which, you know what, I don't want to speak ill of people or trash people. Well, I do kind of a little bit, but I'll see how this show goes. Might go off on a tangent, bit of a rant about it. But anyway, the night itself was lots of fun. I woke up next morning feeling pretty, not pretty. I can confirm that. Pretty exhausted, pretty painful, maybe, but not aesthetically pretty. In fact, quite fucking far from it. I can assure you. Not pretty, in fact. I mean, you're always your own worst critic, aren't you? Some of you listening to this might be thinking, oh, I'm sure you didn't look that bad, Aid. I'm sure you were, pretty in your own way to someone out there. No, I'm confident in saying that the state that I was in when I woke up on Saturday after the gig was, right? Like, if you find that physically attractive, something happened to you. Like, your childhood was a bookshelf full of sad stories for you to find what I looked like on Saturday morning somehow sexually attractive. Because I was objectively awful. Just sweaty, hungover, bloodshot eyes, pale, gaunt looking. Like, I went too far. I'm not used to it anymore. That's the problem. I'm 42. I could barely handle it in my peak, like back in the day, like the beer years. I don't know why I thought, middle-aged me would be able to just skate through a few bevoirs and be unscathed the next morning. That was a miscalculation on my part. But I don't know. Do you think there are people out there who'd honestly say how I looked on Saturday morning was hot? Because I sincerely doubt that. I know that's a weird question. Like, maybe you're checking out this show for the first time and you're thinking, what the fuck? Like, I thought this was supposed to be about politics. Why is this guy, like, vomiting out his insecurities like this? Because the alcohol has made me sensitive and I need some reassurance, okay? But yeah, do you think there's actually people out there who have a thing for hungover 42-year-old men? It'd be a bit of a weird kink, wouldn't it? But almost certainly be like rooted in, growing up in a shit situation where your desperate single mother clung on to some useless piece of shit guy because she couldn't afford to leave him. And then he was always drunk, but you were a kid, so you never saw him drunk and, happy in the evening, or that was past your bedtime. But when you were awake in the morning, playing with dolls or watching cartoons or, that was when you saw him. And then he was hungover, looking awful. And so now, through that experience in your childhood, you've normalized it. So now when you see that, to you, your brain associates that with, the unit and the relationship and say, wow, I'm going really deep on this, aren't I? I'm sorry, guys. This is quite a tangent. Clearly, after a big night, my brain is really, willing to go the lengths and depths required to convince me I'm not totally disgusting to the entire planet. That is, I think, what that tangent was about. Anyway, look, I guess what I'm saying is I did not look pretty after the gig. Did we get that? Did I get that point across? I looked quite unwell and tired and haggard. Ugh. I sent my girlfriend a picture of my face on Saturday morning from the hotel. And she was like, wait, did you do cocaine last night? I was like, no, I did not. Like, this is just how I look now, apparently. Like, like I look like I've been doing drugs even when I haven't touched them. And I've just had a few beers. Just haggard as fuck, Like, anyone that's listening to this who's like, late 20s or early 30s, the struggle is real. Your tolerance does decline. Drinking does get worse, or your ability to handle it, at least. Because hangovers now, at 42, make me look as bad as cocaine did when my girlfriend and I first met, when I was like 31. And it's kind of funny because, like, when I used to get wrecked and I'd host a stand-up night back in the day, I'd stay out, I'd get annihilated, and then, like, my girlfriend would see me, and the ravaging of the drugs and booze that night, like back then when I was 31, that would age me like 10 years. Right. I would look 10 years older than I actually... And now, it is legitimately 10 years later, and just a few beers leave me looking just as bad. Like, it kind of adds up, doesn't it? The maths are fine with that, I think. Anyway, so yeah, it was fun. The Riot Society gig. But I felt like a right twat because I was talking to the comedian Ashley Hayden. We booked him for the night, and he's great. He's dark. He's ranty. He's like me, but better. He's visceral. He's acerbic, and anyway, he did his set, and it was fun. And then we were talking about like booze and alcohol tolerance, like after we'd come off stage, and he's like, oh, my tolerance is shit now. And, because it's been like 10 years since he and I were first gigging together. And we used to stay behind and have a few beers like back in the day. And he was such a booze hound. And anyway, now he's like, my tolerance has just disappeared. And I was like, oh, really? Like, because my tolerance is pretty good these days, like mostly because I self-medicate my way through the weekend parenting, like I built up a tolerance that way. But, like Saturday, boom, Sunday. But like I've done TikToks and tweets about this. So apologies to any of you who've heard me say, or indeed slur, this stuff before about how I'm like, honest, I'm a better dad after 3 o'clock on a Saturday. because that's when they start getting tired and crabby, but that's when I start knocking them back like I'm on a fucking stag weekend, you know? Like, I'm not even joking. It's like liquid calmness every weekend. Crack open a cold one. Like, go, gadget patience. Like, the kids are badgering me. The girlfriend's trying to talk to me about something or other. The bathroom's fucked. We've got to drive to Kettering or something on Sunday. You know, maybe my dad's trying to ring me on Skype. Like, everything is just flying off. It's just chaos. It's just a house full of Tasmanian devils, right? And I'm getting snappy or overwhelmed or whatever. But just a little alcohol, you know, a microdose or whatever. And I'm just better at all of it then. It's like magic. I'm carefree. I'm in a good mood for my kids. Like, it's like I'm on holiday or so. It's like instant relaxation. You know, placating the stresses of fun. In fact, do you know what? It's not a holiday. It's a placation. That's what it is. So anyway, look, I'm in the bar after our sets. I'm telling Ashley about how my tolerance is, you know, actually pretty good these days, Ashley. Sorry to hear that your tolerance is taken a bit of a hit, but my tolerance is actually pretty good. And then, honestly, within 3.5 hours, I was literally stumbling drunk. I was like absolutely pathetic and not entirely dignified. It was like, you know, beer flowing, you know, I'm talking nonsense to Ashley, you know, we're catching up. It was fine. Like, I didn't say anything rude. It wasn't a problem. I didn't need looking after or anything, but yeah, I was just fucking hammered. So, yes, I can assure you, dear listeners, that if you were not able to make it to the first and possibly last ever Riot Society show, if you weren't able to make it and you were wondering how it went, that's how it went. Or that's how I went. I had to bail at about 1:30 to go back to my hotel room with a sack full of McDonald's. Looking like some, you know, horrendous divorcee cliche. It was like, do you know what it's like? It's like a glimpse of what my life will be like when Lucy regains her senses and leaves me. That's kind of what it was. It was like, you know, like I imagine her at some point finally reaching the end of her tether. You know, she's like, fuck this piece of shit. Kids, get your shit. Come on, we're going. Like that moment. That inevitable moment that's definitely happening. And that's the thing, man. Like, you know, I'm 42. I'm stumbling out of this, you know, ostensibly what is a comedy club, I guess. You know, I'm hammered. I go and get McDonald's. I go back to my hotel room and it's just this little dinky, like, but basically a police cell or a jail cell. It's just so small. It's like a converted cupboard. And it's like a glimpse of what my life will be like when I end up in a, you know, post-marriage, divorcee, you know, bedsit thing. It's strange, isn't it? Because like the different perception that you have of somebody when they're doing the exact same things, but just 20 years apart. Like 24 years old, if you see someone stumbling a bit with beer in hand, having a good time, you know, that person actually might kind of look a bit cool. You know, like maybe he's celebrating the potential of his life. Maybe he got a promotion. Maybe he just met a girl earlier that day and now he's out celebrating. You know, people understand that. People like that even. You know, the potential of his life. 24 years old, out with his mates. Always had a bit too many. People, that's kind of funny. That's endearing. But 42, stumbling with a beer in hand. You look like you're fucking, you know, going through some things. And so, yeah, there's a definite sort of post-divorce vibe to it, you know? I think that is what my life would be like, though. Like, you know, stand-up gigs, getting hammered, shit food, bouncing off lampposts at 1 a.m, you know, stumbling back to my room in a shit hotel. Like the fucking walls on Googe Street are a pinball machine, just bong, bing, bong, you know? So, that was Riot Society. And the stand-up part, right, stand-up was good fun. It was good to be back doing that. But then the panel, the podcasty bit. So if you're listening to this for the first time, you won't know what Riot Society is, right? It was a night that me, Supertansky, and Danny fucking Price decided to put on as a sort of unique, you know, it's like half comedy, but it's comedy with a conscience. So the second half of the evening was supposed to be like a panel podcast thing, right? And the second half was not actually that fun for me. Like, you know, I don't want to, it was nobody's fault really. Like it didn't ring my bell, you know? I don't know if I'll do that again. Like we probably should do something like that if, and that is a big if, we do another Riot Society event. But I don't look at it, you know, but I think it's important that we have a space where people can talk and debate and ask questions. But I don't know if I personally will attempt to host it, you know, or if I do, it's not going to be anywhere near as serious because Friday was a bit much. It wasn't fun for me, that part. Which even saying that makes me feel like a fucking tosser, you know, like... Because it's like, not everything has to be fun, Aid, all right? Sometimes things are serious and require a level of responsibility. But then I'm like, yeah, and I self-medicate my way through those things to make them fun. We've been through this. Are you going to pass me the bottle opener or not? Right? Like, that's, yeah. I'm a piss taker. That's what I do. Very little is sacred. My bar is pretty high in terms of what I find offensive or what I think is jokeable about, you know, for want of a better word. And there's a lot of stuff with, you know, the politicsy, commentary, TikTok-y stuff that I do, right, where I do take it seriously because, you know, depending on what the subject is, like it, a lot of the time it feels so fucking obvious that it needs fixing, right? So it's easy for me to talk about things like that seriously because they seem, you know, like Brexit or PR or climate change or institutional racism, you know. But if I had the choice, this is where we actually get down to the nooks and crannies of my psychology. If I had the choice out of making a joke that hammered the point home or doing some serious, earnest, you know, point making to a nodding, chin-stroking crowd, I would take the joke every fucking time, right? But the panel wasn't that. The panel felt, as I've alluded to, like a bit much for me, you know? Like stand-up, great fun, you know? Alexandra Haddow was on, Ashley Hayden was on, Danny fucking Price did the emceeing, I did a set, like all of that I think went pretty well. And it was fun. You know, like the crowd were a bit heckly, but they were just, you know, getting involved in things. And it was, I had a good time. I really felt like, yeah, man. Oh, God, I miss doing this, you know? But then when the panel started, I don't know, like purely selfishly, it just felt like for me, it felt like this feels combative, you know? So I already spend half my life on Twitter as it is. I don't want to, you know? This feels like some people in the audience are fucking angry about shit. Like they really want to shout their point and make someone else feel bad about it. It was that kind of vibe. It all got a bit question time. Which is fine. Like I get that people are hurting. Like there was this one lady who was a single mother. And she was really frustrated. She was like, you know, what can I do? What can I realistically do? Like, I live in a Tory constituency. I can't move anywhere because of the kids. But every time they vote the Tories in, my life is getting worse, you know? And like, I heard that and my heart just sank, you know? Because it's like, that fucking sucks. But there's such little margin for change in that situation. Like, what can you tell or advise someone in that scenario? Like, you know, fucking start praying, you know, like there's, what can that person do when they're dealt those cards? Like, or, you know, what, I don't know, get some compromising material on the Conservative candidate maybe, or, you know, pull your kids out of school and traumatize them so you can jump on a train and live on your friend in London's sofa for 2 years before you're eligible for a place in a Labour constituency. I mean, even then, it's in a city one with its own set of problems. Like the advice that you can give and the parameters that lady sits in between, if you like, that like the guidance you could give her that would afford her a change in her situation, all of that is just so narrow or absent, and it just left me feeling like, oh, you know, someone else should be sat here moderating or giving guidance on this. You know, I'm just a piss taker. I just crack jokes. I'm trying to keep the spirits high, you know, like, and then there was this other woman who got out of her seat and came into the aisle and started shouting about centrists and centrism. And I don't know, like, it just felt like the goodwill and the fun from the first half just got shit on, you know, with this permeating anger and this feeling of not being listened to, right? And again, like, it's fine to voice those opinions, and it's certainly fine to feel them. But it was just a bit like, you know, to me, it felt like, you know, aren't we trying to have a fun conversation, you know, with two guests and a guest host? Like, I thought that's what we were doing here, no? Like, are we, like, did the you know, the oh God, what now? You know, those guys, did the Romaniacs guys, did that not get shouted at like this? Do they have to deal with this sort of, you know, I guess you would call it heckling? Maybe they do. I don't know. Maybe they record theirs on, you know, a Monday night when people are less blitzed on cocktails, or I don't know. You know, maybe the other answer to this, or explanation of this, maybe the stand-up wasn't actually that good, Aid. It just pissed everyone off. And then up came the break. They all went to the bar. They were like, Jesus, that was awful. Then they drank. And then by the time we sat down again for the second section, they were like, right. That was shit, lads. Now we're going to give you some shit. Maybe that's what happened. I mean, I don't think that's what happened, but, you know. Anyway, so just to keep this 100% crystal, you know, I don't necessarily have a problem with people voicing their opinion or, you know, speaking their truth and all that, especially when, you know, people like me go, okay, you know, let's get some questions from the audience. That's, you know, it's totally fine. We put it out to the audience. Now we should hear what you have to say, right? I just think if it's going to be like that, I personally probably won't do the live panel again. Like, it just isn't fun for me. I think the moderatory stuff is different to what I enjoy about podcasts. Like, I like stuff like this. I like riffing and roasting and sipping my beer. You know, I don't want to be Fiona fucking Bruce, right? Anyway, look, let's not dwell on that too much, because it was a really fun night. You know, the run-up to it, the organisation behind it, not so much. But the actual night itself, great fun. And yeah, I don't want to focus too much on, you know, people shouting a little bit in the second half. That was a tiny part of it. Like, the stand-up in the first half, I think went great. Danny's first time emceeing a gig, I think went really well. He got some good laughs, man. For somebody that's never done that kind of shit before, to do that your first time in front of 200 people must be daunting as fuck. So to do it, like, you know, no experience, I don't know. I heard the laughs that he was getting, and I think he did excellent. So I was really pleased with him, and also, you know, chuffed for him, if you like. And then Patsy Stevenson, who some of you may know, like from the Sarah Everard vigil last year or year before, I can't remember now. She was the lady that was slammed to the floor, and she ended up on the front page of all the newspapers. And she came down and she did a 5 or 10 minute monologue for us, and that was really cool too. And then I got shit hammered. So yeah, it was a fun time. Onwards and upwards. So let's get into some news, shall we? What's going on out there? You know, let's do this. Let's talk for a minute let's talk about these UFOs. Let's get weird. Cheers. These UFOs, man. Like, to be honest, like, the last time there were stories like this in the news, it was the silver monoliths that kept springing up everywhere. Do you remember those? I'm going to say it was about January 2021, maybe. That feels about right to me. Based entirely on the fact that I referenced it in the first episode of this podcast, like when I was just starting it. And I think now it's about January 2021. Anyway, they kept being found, didn't they? It was like, in the middle of a desert, and then there was another one over here in a national park, and then they vanished. Just poof. And it was like the beginning of a sci-fi movie, right? Like I don't remember what the end game was with that. I think from reading about it this morning, like in the loose amount of prep that I do for my show, I found that it was like one person said it was an art project by some guy who had a terminal illness, and then he died, and then all of it became active, or something, like some dead artist guy. And then there was another thing where somebody said it was an art collective, like a guerrilla art collective. I don't know what it's supposed to signify or tell us, but that was another theory. And anyway, whatever it was, that was the last time that a news story to me felt like this. But now it's this shit. And this is from Sky News. It says, unidentified objects downed over Alaska and Canada, and they're much smaller than the Chinese spy balloon, White House says. How about that, Unidentified objects downed over Alaska and Canada. And so this should be sort of contextualized, right? With the Chinese weather balloon stuff that we've read about over the last couple of weeks. Like these big white spy balloons have been appearing. Like one of them got shot down over South Carolina, wasn't it? And everyone was joking, like, why the fuck would you be spying on South Carolina? and why with a balloon? Like, aren't we supposed to be living in the future, man? Like, aren't we supposed to be hacking? And phones, and networks and nuclear codes, or, like, what does spying mean to you outside of the context of these fucking Chinese hot air balloons or whatever? What does spying, what's the connotations that you get when I say spying? You think of, like, murdering people in Vauxhall and leaving them zipped up in a holdall in a bathtub, right? Or mixing toxins and, poisoning motherfuckers with sushi and tea in Piccadilly Circus. Or Israeli intelligence services installing spyware on celebrities' phone. Like, that is spying in the 21st century. All of that shit. High tech. Hacking. Information security. Like all of that stuff. WikiLeaks. That's what I think of when somebody says spying. Or even more specifically, and perhaps, more relevant, certainly to me, but perhaps to some of my followers, like, how many times have we heard stories about how dangerous TikTok is? How it drinks in user information. How it's Chinese state affiliated. So it could be spying on you guys. High tech. Hacking. User data. Now we're supposed to believe that these fucking balloons are part of a Chinese espionage program. Like, really? All that technology and the world's biggest economy, and you think they're like, yeah, send a balloon and a guy looking out of it with some binoculars. Like, you fucking idiot. Is that really what we think spying in the 21st century? Like, do you know what it reminds me of? This whole, sort of not really plugged into modern technology read of a situation. Do you know what it reminds me of? There was an interview with the journalist, ex-Guardian journalist, and then he started The Intercept, and now I think he just works independently, but his name's Glenn Greenwald, right? And I forget who it was that interviewed him, if it was the BBC, or maybe it was CBS, or so, I don't know. Anyway, they were nonchalantly, sort of dismissively saying, like, well, if Mr. Greenwald is worried about someone gaining access to what's on his hard drive, I think he should just, keep it safe and secure in his own bag. Like, they completely missed the point of hacking and information security and compromised corporate data. And Glenn Greenwald was like, this isn't 1999. This stuff is in the cloud. It perseveres. It like, you hack a server, you pull that info. Anyway, like these motherfuckers just live in a time of, internet dongles and USB hard drives and MSN messages. And, I get it. The internet was a fun time back then. But this is now, like your user data isn't safe just because you keep something on a USB stick. It doesn't work like that anymore. We've moved on from that. Anyway, it's kind of similar with this Chinese air balloon thing, You're not going to be safe from Chinese espionage just because you shot down a balloon, Like, do we honestly believe a cornerstone of China's geopolitical intelligence program is flying hot air balloons over Carolina? Really? And I've seen some people tweeting about this stuff, well, it's not just any balloon. It's capable of flying close to a place and, it's intercepting phone calls and listening to conversations. And I'm like, yeah, so is the US government. So, like, what is your point here exactly? Like, you don't like losing your privacy? Like, where have you been? Or you don't want US government agencies to lose their privacy? And if that's the case, okay, that's it, guys. Come on, let's wrap up. Let's call it. Irony just died. Irony died at 1:36 on Monday, the 13th of February, 2023. Like, US government agencies don't want to lose their privacy. We are over the event horizon of self-awareness. We are into the vacuum now, people. Honestly. A US agency worrying about its privacy is like fucking, the Coney 2012 guy worrying about your internet longevity. Like, don't start, preaching to do the right thing here, bro. You just haven't had the practice, That was a weird one, wasn't it? The Coney thing. Maybe I'm showing my age a little bit now. That was like 10 years ago. Over 10 years ago, in fact. The Coney thing. Coney 2012. Those guys produced a super slick promo video. Like warning and, raising awareness. Or demonizing even this African warlord, right? And it blew up. It was like... it was like a one-hit wonder of activism, really, wasn't it? It was like, this slick video produced like a Michael Jackson music video, like loads of effects and fade-in stuff, and it just exploded. And Rihanna shared it. People fucking donated $30 million to that campaign, right? Hugely successful. Just blew up. And then one of the main guys behind it just goes out into the street, starts jerking off in broad daylight or some shit. It was just like, what the fuck? How do you go from that to this? Wow. That is quite the rebrand. And it's just, it's game over when you read about that stuff, don't you? Like, I always thought that was a little bit like, is this some weird, like, did they give him some drug to make him do that? So he was discredited. So then this Coney guy wouldn't get brought down, and then he would continue to sell or buy something from the US. Because that to me, like, I wouldn't necessarily, I don't want to get too tinfoil hat about it, but that makes more sense to me than a charity guy at the height of success of his charity campaign decides to go out and completely ruin it by pulling his fucking dick out. Like, what the fuck? How? It's a bit like, who was a guy, Michael... he was a spy. Michael, Shaling, was it? Or something? He was a spy way back in the day in, like, the 90s. And he revealed some secrets about the British establishment, MI6 or MI5 or something. And then within, like, about a year, he was identifying as I guess now we would call him or her trans, but he was confined to a mental institution or something, I seem to remember. And at that time, I was like, this is fuck. And I was only a kid. I was like, this is too weird. Like, I believe that he's been compromised and and medicated more than I believe this has just happened as a coincidence. Anyway, look, I'm going way off on down a rabbit hole here. But in the context of the Coney 2012 thing, I mean, it's quite like there's just no coming back from that, is there? Like, if you had a weird jerk-off story to you published, it doesn't matter what you do as a job. You know, if there's a weird jerk-off story, the narrative shifts from, you know, whatever your actual job is, or the content that you produce, or whatever you put out, or the causes that you're behind. The narrative shifts from that, and what a nice person or great initiative this is, to what a monster you are, and how we should listen to your survivors, right? It just shifts, and there's no way of putting... I mean, unless you're Louis C.K., in which case you yourself weirdly become a survivor of such tabloid hysteria. Like, Louis C.K. should change his Twitter bio to cancel culture survivor. You know, he is the biggest survivor of his own folly, if you like. Anyway, the Coney shit, fucking wild. Like, the guy does the video, it blows up, it's the biggest thing on Facebook and Twitter and The Guardian and everywhere, and it, like, evidently, the PR campaign gets a bit too much for this fella. And he runs out of his house naked and starts making sex gestures at people, and boom, it's all over. Like, it's just dark. Like, it's kind of dark, isn't it? You know, that the charity or the initiative or whatever was just nuked by that. It's like, you know, people don't like warlords stealing kids and using them as, you know, sex slaves and child soldiers and shit. But they really don't like wanking in public, do they? The penis is truly mightier than the child soldier, is what we can glean from that whole messy debacle. Like, there's something kind of, you know, maybe I'm showing my true colours here, but there's something kind of darkly funny about that. Like, and I'm sorry if that comes off as really callous. I'm sure that it does. I don't mean it to. But, like, you know, obviously it's terrible if this Coney guy did what they say he did. But, I mean, it is a little bit funny too, isn't it? Like, I'm sorry they kidnapped you and forced you to shoot your best friend to harden you, and then sold you to another troop, and, you know, then that troop fucked you. They fucking plowed you to dust. I'm sorry that happened. But this guy was running around naked in San Diego making rude gestures. And that is just, I mean, there is no telling how many lives he's ruined. Like, it's just, like, they could haul Joseph Kony in front of the UN, right, in The Hague, and read through the list of the awful shit that he's done. Kidnapping, murder, mutilation, trafficking. Like, the judge would interrupt the guy. Like, guys, come on. Get to the smoking gun. Has he showed his penis in public? Well, no. Not really. Okay, see, then you're wasting my time here. I mean, yeah, but this stuff, Your Honour, this stuff is pretty bad, isn't it? Joseph, you're free to go. Just, you know, keep your dick in your pants and you'll be fine. But that is basically what we're saying. By making that transaction, isn't it? Like, that guy's charity, raising awareness, trying to save lives. And then we're like, yeah, but no, not now. Just no, it's over. Like, his charity was bankrupt within a year. They had the most successful, like, online raising funds thing in history. $30 million or some shit. And because of that, it's like, everyone's like, I'm not fucking donating to that. I mean, that is the power of the penis, really, isn't it? Like, I'm not trivializing how terrifying that must have been if you were walking down that street, you know, and then you saw this apple pie American, naked, dick swinging, you know, screaming and doing gestures. Like, I would be, you know, and I'm a guy. Like, imagine how terrified you'd be if you were a woman walking down the street. Maybe you got your kids with you. Like, you'd be upset, for sure. Must have been scary. But I'm just saying, if that's all it took for the Coney 2012 campaign to completely collapse, like, yeah, we can't do shit for those kids because this guy showed his genital. Like, that is power, guys. That is a win for feminism. everywhere. And no, I'm not being facetious. I'm actually being honest here. Like, when we say that men have power, when we say there's a patriarchy, when we say men have privilege, in a weird as fuck, warped and clumsy way, this is kind of what I mean. You know, like, all that guy had to do was get his dick out in San Diego, and it decimated that campaign, no matter what the great intentions and urgency behind it. It's like, yeah, check out, here's my dick. Oh, well, that's all fucked then. Yeah, shut it down. And you know what, like, you know what lesson we can take from that episode? Influencers and cult members. You know what the takeaway from that one is this is what happens when you go too viral. I think that's why I've worked, like, I don't know if any of you have noticed, but this is why I've worked very hard to remain undiscovered and quite the opposite of viral. This whole time, you thought I was just shit and unengaging. Well, no. It's all very deliberate. I don't want to explode. I don't want to blow up. I don't want to be like, you know, this sort of white hot, insta-famous, sail too close to the sun kind of guy, you know, and end up in the street waving my dick around in the streets of Farnham, something like. So yeah, I'm keeping my views and listens into the low thousands rather than the millions. That's fine with me, and I suspect my family also. I think that's the takeaway. Don't go viral. That is the overarching lesson from the Coney thing. I think not save the kids, not anything activisty or anything. Just if you get famous too quick, you might go nuts and whip it out. That's the lesson here. Here's a weird question, right? Do you think Coney is an industry term for when something goes too fast, too quick? Because it fucking should be, you know? Anyway, look, it's a bit sad how that campaign ended up, isn't it? Like, imagine going from thinking you're a sort of, you know, a Jesus-like savior of enslaved kids or whatnot, and then, you know, then you end up with a totally different reputation, right on the opposite end of the, you know, savior and good v bad scales. Like, it reminds me a bit of, you know, of that meme that went around a while back. I can't remember who it was mocking now, or even really what it said, but but it was something along the lines of, it may be that the entire purpose of your life was just to serve as a warning to others. Like, there's something so dark but yet relatable about that. Like, what if you die on a cliff that's really, and then because of you dying on there, then they erect a sign saying don't go too close to the cliff, and then that saves like 2,000 lives. Like, it's bad for you, it sucks for you, but, you know, what if that's the whole purpose of your life? And it may be that the entire purpose of the Coney campaign, that guy's life, was to serve as a comedy reference point for the sales and marketing industries. I don't know, like, you know, I imagine him going, oh, God, you know, I've ruined my life. It was all for nothing. And people would be like, are you kidding? Like, look at how much joy you've brought to everyone in the marketing industry. Like, every fucking Christmas party, someone makes a joke in a speech about the Coney 2012 campaign. You have brought happiness to millions. Well done, Nigel, or whatever the fuck his name was. Anyway, how did we get onto this? Fucking Coney. Up-to-date comedy references, 8. God, where could you get topical humor like this? Oh, right, yes. So the spy balloon stuff. So the US, Canada, and I think Mexico now, isn't it, have now shot these things down. Like, some of them are balloons, but some of them have been described as like about the size of a camper van or a 4x4, and it's weird, right? It is weird. These things, you know, flying up there, surveilling or scanning or listening in, and, you know, and no one knows where they've come from yet, you know. It's all a bit mysterious. And there's stories, you know, this morning circulating saying that that the US government haven't yet ruled out that it's aliens. So that's good. Fucking amazing. Good job there, guys. That's another layer of, oh no, the world's ending, to the layer cake of doom that we're currently all feasting on. Fucking, Brexit, pandemics, climate change, Putin going nuts, the fucking possibility of China sending these things. But no, let's throw aliens into the mix too. Great. Fucking good job. Good job, lads. But right, here's what gets me about that. Like I said on TikTok this morning on a live thing about this. Like, how weird. Like, do you remember the Alien movies, right, back in the day? And how, like, they were always set in the US. It was always, an alien ship hovering over the White House, or, aliens arrive in Los Angeles, in Alien Nation. And they infiltrate American society, and in the X-Files, 2 FBI agents that investigate aliens in America. Like I always used to mock that stuff because it always felt like, come on, guys. Like, are we seriously supposed to believe that these little green men, every time, they're just as insulated and tunnel visioned in American culture as America is? Is that what these aliens, like they've got amazing technology. They've surfed the wave of wanderlust across the fucking galaxy. They want to seek out new life and new civilizations. But then when they get to Earth, they inhabit the same America-specific attitude as Americans. They just beam down there and that's that. Like, that's good enough. We could have landed in Bulgaria or a fucking village in Wales, but no, America every time. These alien motherfuckers curiously traveling the galaxy, they land in the US and become American. Like, no interest in holding a passport or going further afield, or, they just adopt this sort of, when in Rome, trying to blend in with America, like, throw away their alien passport and shit. Like, and it's weird now, right? Because I guess my point here is that, here we are in 2023, and these fucking, ET balloons arriving, I was about to say everywhere, but they're not everywhere. They're in North America only. These fucking ET balloons, and the US government won't say if they've ruled out extraterrestrials or not. And I'll be almost gutted if it does turn out that literal aliens have come to Earth and they are just landing in America. Like, it would just feel like that whole time I thought I was, better than Hollywood, scoffing at Hollywood. And it turns out they were fucking bang on. Do you know what I mean? There's something kind of really quite hollowing about that. Anyway, guys, I've been ranting away now for like 50 minutes. Thank you so much for joining me, especially for these solo shows. I'll be back on Friday night this week. I'm interviewing, really excited about this, actually, Ian Dale. I don't know who of you listen to this who might be aware of him, but he's an LBC presenter. He's a conservative, which is going to be interesting. He's a former Tory candidate. I think he tried to get elected in Norfolk. And was unsuccessful, but then he moved into a career in broadcasting. He runs a bookshop, I think, like an online book ordering thing. But I think he's a really interesting guy to listen to, particularly on LBC, because he always comes off as measured and reasonable and transactional. Like, he listens to your point as a lefty and then responds in what I think is an articulate and, considered fashion. And I think that's a really important thing to celebrate and to recognize, because obviously we live in a time of tribal divisionism, for want of a better word. And it's important that when you do get people on the right or the left who can actually have a conversation without resorting to parody and slogans, and, people who actually listen to what the other side is saying and let it swirl around in their brain before they respond in a way that is intelligent. I don't know. I'm just looking forward to having that conversation. So that's this coming Friday night, I think 7:30. Ian Dale from LBC, and then I'll be back next week with another solo show. Thanks once again. Big shout out to all of the Patreons for continuing your support of the show. If you haven't jumped on the Patreon yet, it's patreon.com/Aid Thompson with an IN on the end. There's 2 shows a week. You get them 2 days before everyone else on Spotify and Apple. Plus, you get first dibs on the London meetups and events like last Friday's. Until next time.